May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be ever mindful of thee, O Lord, my strength and my salvation. Amen. Won't you please be seated? I want to preach to you this morning from our Old Testament reading, the Song of Solomon. This will probably be the first time you have heard in an Episcopal church a sermon on the Song of Solomon. It's not something that we talk about that much. So before I get in, I want to sort of give you a bit of a background about this passage from the Old Testament, and then we'll sort of work it out into real-life applications and practical living. Now, the Song of Solomon is a literary creation. What do I mean? It's not about real people. It's not about real things that have happened. It is a compilation of six canticles or songs that deal with romantic love. And in these discussions of love, we go from the aching yearning of intimacy, the ecstasy of consummation of love, the tensions of separation, the contentment of togetherness, and flirtation, and everything in between that men and women who are in love experience. Now, it's unique in the Old Testament because it's the only extended love song that we have. And it can be classified as among the wisdom books. We have 3 wisdom books. The book of Job looks at the mystery of suffering. Ecclesiastes looks at the mystery of meaning, of being. You may know a song or a passage or two from Ecclesiastes, whether you know it or not. When I was a child, there was a very popular song that had incorporated these words from chapter 3 of Ecclesiastes. For everything there is a season, a time for every matter under the sun, a time to be born, a time to die. And it continues and closes, a time to love, a time to hate, a time for war, and a time for peace. If you recognize the Birds song, Turn, 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 that's exactly taken from the book of Ecclesiastes. And the 3rd wisdom book is the Song of Solomon. And that explores the mystery of love. And it was written, I think you need to understand, to be entertainment. This was written to be sung at weddings, at royal banquets, at festivals. Now, in the olden days, they didn't have radios, they didn't have VCRs and DVDs, and you could listen to music on demand. Music was a special thing. You had it at special times and at celebrations and events. And the Song of Solomon were sung in those family gatherings of weddings, at the royal court, at banquets. And it was, and from the very beginning, though, people have said, well, this is a love song. Do we really want to have this as religious worship? And going back to the Council of Jamnia, in 90 AD, the rabbis said, yes, if without this, our knowledge of God is not complete. Now, this poses a bit of a problem for interpreters over the next 2,000 years. From the very beginning, the Old Testament rabbis and the New Testament fathers looked at this as being part of God's holy word. But this is about sex. And we're Episcopalians. We talk about money, we talk about politics, but we don't talk about sex. But this is about romantic love. And it's not just sort of spiritual, oh, the moon in June and all that sort of stuff. This has passages that speak, and Bella's going to turn bright pink, I know, about kissing, about fondling, about the consummation and the physical intimacy of a loving relationship. Well, how, in God's name, can we put this in God's name? Now, over 2,000 years, people have tried to do this in various ways. They've tried to totally spiritualize this and have it float about 10 feet above everybody else. Or they've tried to make it sort of a bawdy, sort of song that you sing at a wedding reception after the bride and groom leave and you want to get rid of your brother-in-law and you start singing songs. No, I think we should take it as it is written and try to understand what is going on. Try to understand why the rabbis and the church fathers felt that it was important that we kept this in those books that we studied and understood as God's Word. Now, you need to understand sexuality. Sexual relations between a man and women are not solely talked about in the Song of Solomon. You've got all the Old Testament laws, you've got the New Testament moral teachings, and the Song of Solomon doesn't stand against these, but with these. So, for instance, premarital sexual relations in the Old Testament are condemned. If a man slept with a woman to whom he wasn't married, they had to get married. And if it was an adulterous relationship, they better watch out because they could be killed. In Matthew's Gospel, Jesus talks about sexuality, that we should not commit adultery. We cannot betray our spouses. We've made an oath, a covenant with God. And besides, God knows and judges us by what's in our heart. There's a passage in Matthew, if you commit adultery in your heart, you've just about done it. You remember Jimmy Carter got in trouble with this. He gave an interview to Playboy magazine and said he lusted in his heart and was a sinner. Now, I'm not a Jimmy Carter fan. You won't see many buttons under my vestments here. But he was actually repeating something from the Bible, that when we lust in our heart, we are committing a sin that God is aware of. So when you read the Song of Solomon, when you read these descriptions of intimacy and love, you need to understand it is within the context of this greater world. And the other thing I think we need to point out is that when you're betrothed in the Old Testament, that's it. It's done. You're married. You don't date anybody else. You can't change your mind. That's why when Mary, who was betrothed to Joseph, was found to be pregnant, Joseph contemplated putting her away and not embarrassing her, because she should have been stoned for adultery, because she was betrothed, which means they hadn't consummated physically the marriage, but everything else was set. But Joseph in his heart didn't want to hurt her because he loved her. And then an angel, of course, told him the truth, that she was going to give birth to the Son of God. So keep this all in mind when we read the Song of Solomon. Now, let's sort of get into this actual passage that we have in front of us. This is the start of the second of the 6 canticles in the Song of Solomon. And you need to understand this is a song. So this would have been heard by the ancient Israelites and the early church as singers. Think of this as a duet. Bing Crosby and the Andrews Sisters, if you want. I don't know. Whoever you'd like to have, men and women singing to each other. But it starts off with the woman, the girl singing, "The voice of my beloved, look, he comes, leaping upon the mountains, bounding over the hills. My beloved is like a gazelle or a young stag. Look, there he stands behind our wall, gazing in at the windows, looking through the lattice. My beloved speaks and he says to me," then Frank Sinatra steps in, "Arise, my love, my fair one, and come away. For the winter now is past, the rain is over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth, the time of singing is come, and the voice of the turtle dove is heard in our land. The fig tree puts forth its figs, and the vines are in the blossom. They give forth fragrance. Arise, my love, my fair one, and come away." It's a love song. Now, you can read it on one pure level. You can go to a wedding and you can hear it sung, "Oh, isn't that a nice tune?" But the wonderful thing about really good music is it has levels and layers. It has the top level, if you will, the pop level, the secular level. And then at the deeper and deeper you go into it, it can speak to things that you always heard it, you always knew it was there, but you didn't know it was there. Let me give you an example of a modern song that I think pretty much all of us would have heard that speaks to this sort of layered, because it's an excellent song. It was a very popular song. It was one of the top hits of 1969. It was written by a man named Jimmy Webb and Glenn Campbell. And it starts off, I'm a lineman for the county, and I drive the main road, searching in the sun for another overload. I hear you singing in the wire, I can hear you through the whine, and the Wichita lineman is still on the line. Okay, we have a song about a utility worker. And somewhere, Wichita, Texas, Wichita, Kansas, Wichita County, Oklahoma, it's a Wichita someplace, but you imagine the countryside, sort of the flat expanse of the prairie with the poles, one after another, going on and on and on, and there's a man all the way up at the top of the pole by himself working on the wire. So far, so good. It's sort of, in part, Glenn Campbell had a lot of geography songs. He did The Last Time I Got to Phoenix and Galveston, Galveston. Maybe this is part of his traipsing through the southwest of the United States. Maybe. Well, let's go to the second stanza. I know I need a small vacation, but it don't look like rain. And if it snows that stretch down south, won't ever stand the strain. And I need you more than I want you, and I want you all the time. And the Wichita lineman is still on the line. On one level, Jimmy Webb, the author of these words, was talking about the longing of a man for his long-lost love. Jimmy Webb, the author of this, and he wrote a number of popular 60s songs. Do you remember Up, Up and Away, My Beautiful Balloon? This one was the song he was most proud of in his very long career. And Billy Joel later wrote, Wichita Lineman is a simple song about an ordinary man thinking extraordinary thoughts. Because Jimmy Webb was the son of a Baptist preacher from the Oklahoma Panhandle who went to Los Angeles to make his fortune in music. And he met this guy, Glenn Campbell, who was a session musician. Glenn Campbell was the guy, he played the guitar for Frank Sinatra on Strangers in the Night and all these things. He was a session musician. He wasn't a singer. He was a guitarist. But he wanted to make that move into singing because he would watch Frank Sinatra singing, for instance, and he would play the same, the vocal line that Frank Sinatra would sing, and he would listen to how Sinatra would change the intonation, shorten words, strengthen words, give it a sense of meaning and purpose. And he thought, man, I could do that too. And he went to Jimmy Webb, who was a friend of his, and he said, write me a song. And this is what he got. Now, on one level, this is about a lineman, a working man, thinking ordinary thoughts about girls. But he's also thinking extraordinary thoughts about life and God. And I need you more than want you, and I want you all the time. This is a description of our relationship with God. Now, you can sometimes take a song, and it's like taking a shovel when you want to cut a souffle. You could really smash it and make the whole thing a little silly if you get too deep into it. But here's a modern example of a secular song that had for its author a multi-level meaning. A pop song, a song about the yearning and need for God in our lives. Now let's jump back to the Song of Solomon. Now remember, in ancient Israel, there wasn't a distinction between the top 40 hits and church music on Sunday, Saturday in the synagogue. Because in the Jewish world, everything was God-breathed. Everything, all that we lived, everything that was around us was a product of God's love and power in our lives. So there was no difference between secular songs and popular songs. They could just be understood differently and heard differently. And so the Song of Solomon tells us in this very brief snippet that we have two extraordinary things. It starts off, my beloved is, look, he comes, leaping upon the mountains, bounding over the hills. My beloved is out in the countryside. The countryside in songs is always a motif of joy and enthusiasm and vibrance and new energy and life. It's the frontier. And look, there he stands behind our wall, gazing in at the windows, looking through the lattice. This Song of Solomon has two settings, the country and the home. Domesticity, safety, routine, security, versus the future, excitement, wonder. We've got these two standing side by side. And he gazes in at the wall, at the windows, looking through the lattice behind our wall. The ancient commentators would write, what does this tell us about our relationship with God? Are we like the lover who to fully consummate physically, spiritually, emotionally, the love and the other, they've got to get out of that house, they've got to go through that wall, past that wall, they've got to go out there. Because doesn't God say that a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh? Not that Susan should marry Cynthia's son and live in their third floor attic, which we had to, unfortunately, for 6 months. But a man shall go forth with his wife as one flesh. What wall are you standing in back of? God is out there. His joy is out there. His power is out there, leaping and prancing like a gazelle. And you're stuck in your mother's house, scared to leave. What's the wall in your life that is preventing you from reaching out and experiencing God? Don't you have to take the same step that the girl has to take to come out from behind the wall, to experience God's love, to experience the love of your beloved? Can you do that by holding on to security and safety in the past? I don't think so. Certainly not in our relationship with God. It used to be when I was in my early 20s, I knew I was to be a priest, but I set conditions for God. I went to work for my father. I worked briefly on Wall Street. I was doing all these things. And I said, God, when I make my first million, I'll stop. Then I'll go to seminary. Then I won't have to rely on anybody else because I got all this money I'm sitting on and I can do whatever you want. And I could be a really well-paid social worker, living off my investments. Well, of course, that wasn't God's plan for my life. And what it turned out to be is that I had to be fully reliant upon God in everything and not make conditions. I will serve you when this happens, or when that happens, or if this happens. You can't go into a relationship and say, I will love you to this point. When I dated Susan, we started dating when she was a freshman, I was a sophomore in college. We were 19. And we went through a progression. The first was that she loved me more than her cat. Then about 6 months later, she loved me more than her brother, which wasn't really hard. He's a bit of a, And I knew I was home when she loved me more than her mother. Can you really have a relationship more than the cat, but less than your brother? Can you really love God if you've decided that your comfort, I'll love God so long as I'm comfortable, so long as I'm happy, so long as I'm rich, so long as I'm successful, so long as I get the winning lotto numbers, I'll love God. But until I do, maybe not. It doesn't work. Well, let's look at the man's lines in this little snippet we have here. Arise, my love, my fair one, and come away. For now the winter is past, the rain is over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth, the time of singing has come. It's springtime. Lots of romantic songs have spring in them. But you know, God's love can appear, and your love can appear at any time of the year. Yes, springtime is poetically the time we have of love songs take place because it's the time of new birth, of excitement, of the seasons are changing, the dark days of winter are over. Everything is getting better and greener and brighter. That's a great motif for love. I had pneumonia this past week and was in bed for 2.5 days. And I absolutely was miserable because I'm a terrible, terrible patient. So I'm lying in bed and I'm watching the weeds grow foot by foot for every minute I'm in the house. I'm thinking all the things I have to do. I hate this. And so I start, I was going to really, let me see what's in the Sunday services and I'll really get a jump on this, and it's the Song of Solomon. Oh, no. No. I want something simple like hell and damnation, something to make Dottie happy, something about hell that get everybody excited. Well, so I had to think and I had to read, and I'm reading this and I'm praying about this and I'm thinking about it, and a line came to me from my college days. It was a passage from Flaubert. I'm really getting artsy-fartsy, aren't I? Love is a springtime plant that perfumes everything with its hope, even the ruins to which it clings. What does that mean? Well, it means exactly what the Song of Solomon is saying. When you're in love, the world can be falling apart all around you, but the power, the joy, the fragrance of love makes everything new. When we dated in college, Susan and I frequented a particular restaurant, the Ivy Room it was called. I had a job in college. I was a traffic cop. Yes, I was a traffic cop and a meter maid, and it was my job on the campus to give people traffic tickets and parking tickets. So I was very popular, I guess. But I took this job, plus the little stipend I got from my father, and I blew it all on Susan. And we would go out to dinner as often as we could, every weekend, many nights of the week. And we'd go to the Ivy Room because I could get her dinner and pay with change. I could buy her a cup of tea and toast and push out the nickels and quarters, and we would be so happy, and we'd stare at each other. She'd eat her toast and a Diet Coke, and I could take care of the whole thing for under $3. Well, we went to my 25th anniversary about 10 years ago. Reunion? Thank you. Reunion, yes. I have an anniversary with you, but a reunion at school. That's right, okay. Well, we went to my reunion, and I hadn't been back to the college in 25 years. Hadn't set foot on it since I left. Susan and I got married the month after we graduated, and I really felt no need to go back because life had started. And I went and we looked at all the sights and sounds and scenes, and we went to the Ivy Room. And as I walked in, I was so disappointed because I remembered this beautiful place, golden and bright and just sort of filled with power and love and joy, just the most beautiful restaurant in the world. And I was thinking, my God, why hasn't the city shut this dive down? And the thing was, it hadn't changed. But because I was in a state of love and joy, the fragrance of love clung even to the relic of the ruins around me. Today, people are falling in love in Kabul, Afghanistan, even though the city is falling apart. You can find God in beautiful cathedrals, in wonderful holy sites, but you can also find him on park benches. You can find him in Sunday school class. You could find him out on the golf course. I didn't say that. You can find him wherever he speaks to you. God is not confined by buildings. Love is not confined to seasons of the year and spirits of the year. Love is a gift from God that allows us, human love is the closest we can get, the Song of Solomon says, to understanding the power of God's love for us. that excitement, that joy that drives away all the things that are around. Maybe you experienced that in the first few days of your conversion. And maybe over the years or months, it's sort of gotten quiet, away from that power of love. Maybe that's happened in your marriage or in your relationship. But God calls us to go back and rekindle that power in love so that we know and experience what he wants for us. I always am a movie fan, and I like to watch old movies, and there was one I've seen, maybe a dozen times. It's called The Song of Bernadette. Stars Jennifer Jones, and it's about Bernadette Subaru, the little girl to whom the movie says Mary appeared, and now we have all the pilgrimages to Lourdes. I don't want to get into Marian apparitions or anything like that. I want to look at the very last lines of that movie. The Bernadette, Jennifer Jones, is lying in her deathbed. The music is swelling, the lights are shining on her face. She's surrounded by nuns and priests, and you can clearly hear the priest read these words. Arise, my love, my fair one, and come away, for now the winter is past. And in the background you hear the priest reading these words from the Song of Solomon, and Bernadette experiences what we call the beatific vision. The vision of God in this life. The experience, the connection with God's power and presence. And for her, it's mediated through the power of her relationship with the Virgin Mary. And what does she say to the Virgin Mary? I love you. Now, when I watched that the first few times, I couldn't, why would she say I love you to the Virgin Mary? Is she some Catholic-y thing that I don't really want to do? No. She is experiencing that love that is so powerful that the closest we can get in our own lives is to say, I love you. When I say I love you to my wife, to my children, that's the closest I can get emotionally to that love God has for me. Now, I'm in danger of overanalyzing a song. You can go too far. But if you should happen to be stuck in bed for 2.5 days with pneumonia, open this little book in the Bible, just after the Psalms, one of the books of wisdom, and read it as if you would be reading song lyrics. Read it for this beautiful poetry. This is really lovely words. Arise, my fair one, my beloved, and come away. That's so beautiful. But let it sink deeper and deeper and deeper into your heart. For you will move from the beauty of the words to the beauty of relationships with your beloved to an understanding of the power of God's love, that it can be yours in your life. God in Jesus Christ loves you. God the Father loves you so much that he gave his only Son, so that you might have exactly this. Not something by and by in the sky, far away and at the end of time, but right now. The experience of God's love, working in you, building you, strengthening you for life today. Amen.